RuPaul to Enterprise. Bring back my girls. Woo! Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Restitching the Tapestry. It's good to see all of you. I hope that you're all doing well. It's another week. Ari, we're at the end of April.
Oh my goodness, I know.
We are it feels weird that we're at the end of April. It's almost May. It's almost springtime. I kind of feel like it's a
Can we make the
point.
NSYNC joke or the Justin Timberlake joke? It's gonna be
It's gonna
May.
be May. I love that it's kind of like it feels like a sense of renewal lately. I don't know about you, but it kind of feels renewal-ish. So I just did my little garden video. I feel like I've been enmeshed in plants.
Plants,
I was
yes.
telling somebody the other day that if I lived in an ideal utopian paradise, I would be a cottagecore sun hat, sundress wearing cat mom drinking mimosas while pulling weeds.
Why not now?
Or is that who I am now?
It is who you are now.
Dun,
Own
dun,
it.
dun. Oh my goodness, the shenanigans today already. So we have a few people tuning in already. It's good to see Arpy's here. Hello, Arpy. It's good to see
Hello.
you. Jackie is here as well. How are you?
Hello,
It's good to
Jackie.
see you. Godzilla Cairo is here. I'm actually here at the beginning for once.
Yay.
If you ever miss the beginnings, you can always catch the replays, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's almost May, and I guess my first question would be, how are things going with you? How are you?
Oh my goodness. So I've been doing a lot of work. I'm almost done with my college class. I'm on week 9, so I have one more week. I have to do this huge paper next week, but I think I can get it done. I've been moving along pretty well. I have an A in my class like usual because I'm so smart.
Because you're
um,
iconic.
because I'm iconic. But I've been working on some other stuff too. I've been working on my book again, Transcendence. I've been
Mm.
doing 6 pages a day on that. Um, and I started picking up my script again, A State of Mind, and I've
It's
been
been a
writing
while since you've worked on that.
a little bit, but I was like, I watched a video that said, you need to challenge yourself more. And I was like, I guess I should start writing again or something. So I'm starting to write again.
Well, that's good. That makes me
Yeah.
happy to hear.
Yeah.
Well, for my week, that's the last week of the semester, so my week has been very grading intensive.
Mhm.
Tomorrow is graduation, so I have to go to graduation tomorrow. Hopefully, I get to see some of my students graduate. I think that would be really cool. It makes me I kind of one of my last classes a few days ago, a couple of my students made me cry.
Aww.
And so I drove home. I was listening to uplift it "Ah."
As we grow on, we remember all the times we spent together. Okay, I'm done.
Cut it off there. We don't need YouTube pinging us for that. But ultimately, the week I've also been doing some gardening stuff. It's been the last few nights have been really cold, so that's kind of set me back on getting some gardening stuff done. But if for those of you who are just salivating over my gardening content, I say that sarcastically because my gardening content typically does not get the views that everything else does. But I have
I'm
resumed my
sorry. Do you
garden.
want me to watch it like 10 million times so you get the views that you need?
You don't have to, no. But my garden therapy series has started. again. So basically, if you don't know what that is, my garden therapy series is a series where I just go through and document like our gardening stuff over the course of a summer. I'm thinking about churning out 4 or 5 videos in that series per growing season. So like nothing extravagant. So
I'm so
um
excited.
RP says, I like all your videos, Donnie. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. So, current event snapshot. So some interesting things have been going on lately. So the first thing is Taylor Swift has been taking the music industry by storm again by releasing her new album, The Tortured Poets Department. Um,
Which what a title. What a
it is
title
I
for
really
an album.
like normally she does like the one word titles, right? But like this one
Mhm.
is actually a very like lengthy title and it's like it's angsty but fun at the same time.
I love it.
But like so like we've been listening to it quite a bit lately and I've listened to it probably like 2 or 3 times thereabouts. And there are some songs that I really love. There are some that I'm just kind of like eh. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not my favorite album, but I do think that it has some gems on it. Like I do think there are some moments on it that are really, really good.
I was on Reddit and her Reddit likes to go through and analyze the lyrics. So I was listening to I was reading through the text analysis and seeing which songs were about her ex and which songs were about so and so and which songs were about so and I was like, you gotta love her, the Swifties. They're on it. They're little detectives.
I mean, I know a lot of fandoms that like as a Gaga fan, we do that all the time too. Like we'll see if she'll tweet something and we'll be like, is that subtext for something? What's going on?
I
Um
love it.
But no, like I have seen like a lot of people like there's like I would argue that this album has gotten a little bit more criticism than her most recent albums because of how quickly it's been churned out. Because when you think about it, in the last 4 years, she's released like 8 album projects, which is a lot.
Intense.
That's a lot. As a creator, I always like worry about oversaturation, but granted, like she's also a billionaire and people gobble her stuff up, you know.
Mhm.
So I don't know if she even would have to worry about that type of
Well, that's
thing.
not on to that's also including all of the stuff that she's re-recorded, like, over her old stuff.
I was including that in that number. So
Oh, okay.
she's had like 4 like newer albums over the past 4 years. She's had 4 re-recordings and then she's done like a couple of like concert films and documentaries and stuff. Now, again, major props for that creative output because if I could be the Taylor Swift of poetry and like churn out 8 books between 2020 and now, I'd be at the top of my game. But I've also just accepted that everybody has their different pacing when it comes to their creative output.
She's also a billionaire, and she probably has people cleaning her house for her and feeding her pets, and that's literally all she does.
That is such a good point. Jackie asks, "Did your patio turn out?" They've not started our patio yet. Um, if you watch the garden videos, I mentioned the patio in it. By the way, everybody, but like I think they've been set back because of weather, so hopefully they will be starting. I'm aiming for tomorrow. We'll see. Um, RP, what about Max? Unsubscribe from Max if you have it. They have a hit piece. Can you explain that a little bit? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Um,
Well, I was gonna say subscribe to Max because they have, the Turtles All the Way Down, movie coming out.
oh, I heard about that too. Yes.
Yeah.
So other current events that have been happening. So within like the last day, the Supreme Court has been hearing arguments regarding Trump's immunity case. Um, which I don't know how like
How do you feel about that? Because I don't know how I feel about that. Because the fact of the matter is that how many people did Trump put on the Supreme Court?
right. Like to me, I think it's just like them going through a process for the spectacle of it. That's just kind of the vibe that I'm like, the performativeness of it. Um,
I don't think that's true.
what do you
I think
think?
that because it's not about performative. It's I think that they have nothing is about performativeness. It's about actual like I mean, people do things because they have to do things. Like
Well, yeah. But
so
will they do things? That's the question.
and that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. That's why I was saying that, I personally, because I know a lot of politics is like the public spectacle. And I was just, part of me was thinking, like, okay, are they doing it because they have to go through the process to check off a box? Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I was worried about. I don't know what'll happen with it, but like, I don't know. Like, I just think that in the overall world when it comes to celebrities, politicians, etc., like, I think since 2020 we've seen this very interesting just lack of accountability for literally anything. And as
Yeah.
as us being like average people, like, it kind of sends a very interesting message of like, if we were to do similar things, like, we would be held to a different standard, you know?
Because
And
we're plebeians. We're just
yeah,
normal average Americans and we don't apparently we can't, you know, we don't bankrupt 6 casinos and still manage to stay afloat and, you know,
yeah.
apparently run the country and commit fraud and get away with it.
Oh. Oh, RB says it's a documentary about Nick Carter and those allegations. I'll have to research it. I'm not sure. I do know that some documentaries aren't always genuine. I'll have to take a look.
Yeah.
Um, Jackie says, well, Ari, well, be getting rid of all streaming channels then. All streaming channels have their ups and oh, you mean like going back to like the HBO Max thing? I mean, we could have a whole conversation about like the problematic nature of monthly streaming and capitalism and all that jazz. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother
I know.
day. So, are we ready for the mission statement?
Is it my turn?
It is your turn today.
Yay! Here we go. Okay. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing.
Love it. Love it.
Yay.
So today's episode is an interesting one because and I think it was inspired largely like last year I was having a conversation with some other LGBTQ plus people about like navigating like very difficult histories, like say like if our families were Christian at a certain point, like navigating those spaces. And I think that like I don't really think we've had an extensive conversation on the show yet about whether or not we've had religious histories and whether or not we've had anything unique being LGBTQ plus that we've had to deal with. So,
Mhm.
like, I'm hoping that tonight, like, I mean, we're going to be a little bit vulnerable tonight, a little bit, of course.
Yeah,
However, I do think that we will manage to kind of turn this into a very meaningful, wholesome conversation that I think just needs to happen. So,
yeah.
um, so let's talk a little bit about our religious histories. Was your family ever religious? Were you ever
Yes, my
religious?
family I grew up Catholic.
Really?
Yeah,
What was that
um,
like?
I was Catholic up until I was about 8 years old, because and I was talking about this a little bit in the back room, so my family, up until my grandfather, was always Protestant, But my grandfather decided at one point, because he was in the military, that he wanted to be Catholic. So he took all of my uncles and my uncle and my aunts and my mother and my grandmother to a Catholic church in my hometown, and
Mhm.
just joined a Catholic church just like that. You just decided now we're Catholic. And so it was a little bit jarring to join the Catholic Church, and but my family really adopted Catholic values about being all in the family and just kind of all being like super religious and
Mhm.
not really taking to a lot of like being part of the community. Like they didn't really have like outside friends or anything like that. It was always like you had to be part of the it was just always about family and being a big family and always like having the most in the family, but always keeping it
Mhm.
within the family. Um
Interesting.
and so that was kind of part of my childhood, is that we always just like came back together and was just always part of it, was always about family. And that was kind of like a Catholic tradition. Um, the thing about it was I stopped being Catholic because my mom got divorced, and um, she uh, she got her marriage annulled. She didn't get her marriage
Mhm.
annulled, so she was excommunicated. Like the Catholic Church was like, "You have to get your marriage annulled," and she was like, "I'm just gonna get divorced and get remarried." And I'm like, "Ha ha ha!" Excommunicated.
Ooh.
And so even though her children, they don't they judge each individual in the church separately. It was sort of like, here's this woman who's bringing her children to the church, and the children are taking communion, but the mother is not. So it's sort of like this weird situation where everybody was shunning my mother, but not the children. So it was sort of like, well, you shouldn't probably bring your children anymore.
Interesting. Right, because that kind of I mean, children would see that, or you probably did see that, right?
Yeah, I
So,
did. Hmm.
I mean, that kind of would uh, kids don't forget stuff like that if they see that.
Yeah, 'cause I remember at one point we went from, like, sitting in towards the front of the church to, like, sitting in the back of the church.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost interesting, like, because I remember this from being Catholic too, like, there's kind of like this inner classism within churches where, like, people with greater privilege typically tend to sit toward the front,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
That's I mean, that was the same case with being Catholic, and then I also was Seventh-day Adventist, so,
Mhm.
Arpy says, "I'm Armenian, and it's pretty conservative culture, Christian and not very queer or mental health friendly." Yes. So your family then is probably not religious anymore because it sounds like that ended quite a long time
Um,
ago?
so after, so I didn't go to church through most of my childhood, even though we were considered, like, a very Christian family. Like, my
Mhm.
mom tried to raise us on Christian values, so my mom tried to instill in us Christian values without going to church necessarily. But when she adopted my nephews, she started finding a church because she wanted to kind of instill in them religion. So she found a Protestant church and started taking them to a Protestant church. Um, but that brought on its own traumas because the Protestant church uh, spoke out against like gay people and stuff, and my
Mhm.
mom was really against it.
Wow, yeah. That's so like, shifting to a different, denomination can be very interesting, like, an almost a culture shock when you think about it. But so I began as Catholic probably until I was about 5 years old. My earliest memory of being Catholic um was it being christened or baptized or something, like, where they poured water on my head,
How old were you?
and I was like I think it was like 4 or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that, but I remember I had my first little sassy gay moment, because when they poured water on my hairdo, I was like, I was like, "Ma, don't," like, I threw a fit in front of everybody over them messing up my hair.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but so, like, I don't really have a lot of memories of being Catholic since that was so early in my childhood, but I remember, my grandmother, my grandma on my dad's side, the one who I was really close to, was still very much Catholic, though she was not practicing.
Mhm.
I'm not sure, like, I think the loss of a family member probably just kind of fragmented things, and then people just didn't go to church anymore to
Yeah.
when it comes to the Catholic faith. But so, like, at a certain point in, like, the mid-90s, my family converted into Seventh-day Adventism. So we
Yeah.
became Seventh-day Adventists, and, um, it was a very memorable experience.
Yeah,
It was a very I'm not gonna like, there were some like, I did meet some really kind people, like, some really good people, but, like, some of the negative things that happened just outweighed all of that over the years. But so for those of you who do not know, what Seventh-day Adventism is, like, Seventh-day Adventists believe that the 7th day or the Sabbath is actually Saturday, not Sunday. So on Saturdays, like, obviously we would attend church, we would do Bible study, and basically we weren't allowed to work, spend money on anything, do anything but just be engrossed in study that
that
entire day.
sounds like a waste of a Saturday to me.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, like, my family, we would go to church, but then we'd get home and we would just nap. Like, that was like our let's study in our dreams.
But
But so
it's sorta like, don't you wanna, like, order out or something? Like, have pizza or
it would
something?
be like, that would have been nice, right? So, now, like, there were certain people in my family who became, like, very militant when it in our Seventh-day Adventism, to the point where we would do, like, a lot of, like, door-to-door converting and, like, so on and so forth. And like, honestly, like, looking back on it now, like, as an 8, 9-year-old, I was being expected to go door to door to strangers.
So you had to proselytize?
I had to proselytize,
Whoa.
and, like, I would have adults scream at me, and, like, it would, like, and it was just like, "Oh, here's just this child, like, send this child out to do this." It's just really
So
mind-boggling.
did you have to give them, like, tracts and stuff like that?
Like, yeah, well, I had to give them, like, literature, I had to, like, give them, like, I had to, like, talk about, like, their personal lives with them as a kid, and I was like, "That's a lot for a kid to do." Like,
That's intense.
yeah. So, and, like, there were just some other things, like, where, um, like, I'll never forget, like, we would do, like, around, like, the holidays, we would do, like, the kids would basically be coaxed into putting together, like, a play or some sort of biblical reenactment,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget that, like, we had to, like, pretend to crucify somebody.
Oh my god, like a church play where you pretend
Yeah.
to
Except we were, like, kids, and we were, like, one of our fellow kids were, like, they were strapped to a cross, and we had to, like, throw stuff at them, and, like, l as a
that sounds
kid,
kind of fun, but also kind of, like, morbid at the same time.
it was, like, there was, like, we had to, like, draw on them, like, with red marker to make it look like there was, like, bleeding, and it was really, Ari,
Sounds
looking
gothic.
looking back on it now, like, now we know why I went through the gothy phase. It's because I had to experience that when I was a child.
True, yeah.
But, like, I mean, I feel like that would be kind of traumatizing for kids too, because there were kids younger than me that were required to participate in this, like
Yeah,
4, 5 years old.
yeah.
This wasn't Away in the Manger. This was like, you know, like, the
Serious
crucifixion of
business.
Christ. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but the real I would say for me, like, the real traumatizing part of being Seventh-day Adventist was when I became so I was a Seventh-day Adventist until probably up until, like, 2003-ish, like, that's when I was entering high school, and, we basically, at a certain age, were recruited into being they were called Pathfinders. It's
Oh, yeah.
basically the Seventh-day Adventist version of Boy Scouts or, you know, whatever it's called.
Which the Boy Scouts are kind of religious in themselves, so this is, like, even a step beyond that.
Very cultish, very
Very
very much
cultish.
cultish. So, like,
Sounds like it.
as Pathfinders, we had to kind of, like, amp up our proselytizing. We had to go to these things called camporees where, like, we would go, like,
So
to these
did you
very
have to, like, wear, like, the uniforms kinda like Mormons?
Yep, I had to wear well, we had to, like, wear, like, these, like, very they looked very much like Boy Scout uniforms, um, and, like, we would get, like, little badges and pins for, like, doing things, um, and
What were
the
some of the things that you had to do?
like, some of the things were, like, outdoor activities, some of the things were, like, Bible studies, reenactments, attending camporees, for example, was another thing that we had to do. So basically, a camporee was like we would go to like a remote area where like they would have like this program, like this educational Adventist program that would go on where we would have to listen to speakers and we would have to like practice proselytizing and stuff like that. We would like literally be camping in tents. It was a lot. Like, I think to this
It
day, that's
sounds
why I don't
really
like
lame.
camping. Like, I think that's why I don't like camping to this day is because of that.
Yeah.
Um, but so at a certain point, like my family, we transferred to another Seventh-day Adventist church. They like it was just a completely different vibe, and like they were very confrontational, contentious. They kept trying to force me into like being like their musician of choice because I used to play the saxophone. So they tried to like
Oh, yeah.
and I didn't want to do it. And they got mad at me for not wanting to do it. And
Mhm.
then eventually, when I went to college and I came out, um, they found out.
Yeah.
And my family is no longer really practicing because a pastor came to do a visitation. So if you did not go to church for like a month, a pastor would come do a visitation to make sure you're all right.
Basically, like, checking on you to, like, kind of pull you back into the fold?
Essentially, yes. So
Wow.
a pastor came to my parents' house. I was down at CMU, so I wasn't even there. And the pastor was like, "Oh, where have you guys been? Blah 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 blah." And then he went on to go. He started to talk about like, "Oh, by the way, I heard through the grapevine that your son is a homosexual."
Yeah.
And so basically, this past like my parents were like, "Well, yeah, he is. He's homosexual." Um, the
So were
pastor
they
basically
avoiding church because of that?
I think that was part of it because I don't think they at that early juncture, I don't know if they knew how to like really navigate a religious space. Well, the pastor basically told them that they had to disown me.
What?
And my parents told him to basically get off the property or something would happen and he thankfully left. And since then my parents have not gone back, which I mean,
I
at
mean, that's
that
good. I mean, that means they
yeah,
support you.
I didn't find out about this happening. Like, they never told me that this happened until probably like 2 years ago. So I was just like mind blown. I was like, wow, like even at that early juncture when I was first coming out, you weren't really processing it very well, but you also kind of stood up for me in a way, which was kind of, I was like, that's really, I appreciate you doing that. Like, your love for me outweighed the church's very militant perspective on
The
the
pull.
yeah. So, like, yeah, Seventh-day Adventists absolutely are not accepting of LGBTQ plus people.
That sounds really mean that they would say you have to disown him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, granted, like, this is nothing compared to, like, I know other people who are in the LGBTQ plus community who have had to deal with, like, conversion therapy, who have dealt with a lot worse, you know? I mean, there are
Yeah.
still memories that stick out, but, like, those things, the fact that some of those things still happen, Speaking of which, I don't know if you all know this, but conversion therapy is still very much a thing in the
Yeah.
United States. So, I did some research on it. So according to Time magazine, conversion therapy, I mean, it's currently banned in 22 states, so that's a good thing. However, that still means that 28 states allow it or don't have any sort of legislation related to it. Um, they also say that there are 1,300 practitioners that still offer conversion therapy in the United States. And every state, excluding Vermont and Hawaii, still have some sort of practicing conversion therapy that takes place, even though it is in many of those states illegal, technically. So, I thought that was very sobering. Like that was very sobering because I feel like we don't really hear about conversion therapy a lot anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
it's something that is not talked about, even though it's something that's still practiced. I know it's something that happens a lot out west, like in Utah,
mhm,
like in Mormon communities, but it's something that's kind of hush hush.
yeah. And like I know like from different accounts that I've heard like a lot of like some conversion therapies would involve like people to go like to a remote area to participate in some sort of like rustic program where they would like have to face the rigors of nature or something like that. And then
Yeah,
others were like more unsafe beyond that even.
yeah,
So but I think that I think that that really shaped a lot of people, you know, like it shaped their impression of religion, especially.
yeah.
Uh,
You were talking about proselytizing, and I remembered that I always get hit with the Jehovah Witnesses.
yes. Oh my goodness.
I don't know what it is. I've
Or
been
the
hit with them,
Mormons who come from door to door too.
but I'll be out in public, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about my personality, but I always draw in the Jehovah Witnesses that they feel like they need to save me or something. Um, because and this is in the last couple years. I literally was just walking down the street near my house. I was walking like by the Walmart or something, just on walking whatever, and was
Mhm.
wearing my green jacket and whatever, and this car pulls up and goes, can I give you something? And I go, no.
The car pulled up to you? That's very
He said,
creepy.
can I give you something? And I said, no. And then she said, I just let him give you this. And she tries to give me like a track. And I was like, first of all, I'm pagan. And said, I don't want your religious track. She said, but I just want to save your soul. I just want to save your soul. I
Oh
said,
my
you can
goodness.
just keep that. But the first time it happened, I was in college. I was like 20, 21 or so. And I happened to be sitting outside, and it was just across the street at the Meyer. I was sitting at the Meyer, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was like sitting on a bench, dozing off a little bit because it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I had been up all night because I had been drinking coffee at the cafe. And because it used to be 24 hours, you could stay out all night, you could drink coffee. And I was up
Mhm.
all night drinking coffee, writing in my journal, whatever. And I was sitting at the cafe, I was sitting in front of the Meyer because I was just like, I gotta like pull myself together before I can drive home. So I was sitting in front of the Meyer, and I was like dozing off a little bit. And a woman comes up to me and says, I need to give this to you for your baby. And I said, baby? I said, I'm not pregnant.
Uh
She said, but your baby needs to be saved. And I said, I'm not pregnant. I'm just fat. And she said,
What?
I need to save you because your baby's future depends on it.
Oh my god.
And I was much thinner then too. So
That's wild to me. Like the things that happen. Oh my gosh, Misty is here. Hello, Misty. Misty says, my aunt was told by her Catholic priest to cut me out of her life for my being queer. Thankfully, she refused and found a new church. That is like, wow, like that really echoes my experience.
Yeah.
It's nice to know when like family members like make what we know is the right decision, right? Thank you for sharing that, by the way, and it's good to see you here. Um, do you remember the religious groups that would come to campus?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So when I was just a little gaby at CMU, fresh out of the closet, like you could smell the Clorox sheets on me. I was so fresh out of the closet. I basically I was walking down, like, across campus one day, like, just taught into class, and I heard somebody scream the derogatory F slur at me.
What?
Like, and I look over, and there is this dude proselytizing right in the middle of the sidewalk with a Bible, like, with a megaphone and everything like that, and just screaming at me, like, "You there, you're like, I bet you're a blah blah blah, like here, this verse is for you, blah." I'm like, what is going on? I like quickly ran to class because that it made me so uncomfortable. But then
I hated having them on
it was
campus.
terrible. I on my way back from class though, like there were like hundreds of people like protesting this person, and I need to go back and like my video
Nothing's
footage.
changed. They still go to college campuses,
Oh,
those people.
definitely. Regardless the response they get, they always go. And I do have some, like, really old video footage from, like, 15 years ago of this. I'll have to find
That's
it.
actually how I got involved in, that's how I got involved in our religious diversity group, is I was a journalist back then, and I was covering all of the religious groups on campus. I was doing a news story for one of my classes,
Oh.
and, I had taken video of one of those, proselytizers, and I was talking about how there were 15 Catholic groups on campus, but only one pagan group on campus, or one religious diversity group on campus, and that religious diversity group was the group that I joined, and that was
Wow. And
I
then
had
that's how we met.
and that's how we met. But I was doing a news story about it, and I made a video for my class, and I had gone to the pizza party, and I was getting quotes and stuff for my news story.
I remember that. Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, Not to do a small little callback to college nostalgia, but
Yeah.
there's nothing more nostalgic than being called a slur walking down the sidewalk on campus, attending a protest afterward, and then going to a pizza party that night at a religious diversity group.
I ate so much pizza, it was so good.
I did too. I did too. So here's an interesting question. Despite your religious history, do you feel at peace with your prior events and or even comfortable with stepping foot in religious spaces?
Um, so I here's the thing, um, I've gotten more comfortable with it since leaving the Catholic religion, because for a while there, I wasn't at peace with it. I felt a lot of, like, very anti-Christian and very, like, there's a lot wrong with the Christian religion, and I felt like, people, especially because, like, you know, because I had gone to CMU and I saw, like, all of the stuff that people, do with their religion, and especially, like, you see, like, people, like, I was very, like, anti-capitalist, because it was I saw, like, George W. Bush, and, like, you saw, like, the teetotalers, like,
Mhm.
the teapot people during that time of, like,
Yeah.
using their religion to kind of sway politics and stuff like that. So during that time, I was, like, very, very Democrat leftist.
Hmm.
So I had a hard time coming to terms with Christianity. But the thing about it is I had um, my mental breakdown in Seattle, And so during the very lowest point that I had during my mental breakdown, I was in jail and I was at my very, very lowest point. I didn't have my paganism to fall back on. I had nothing. But the thing about it was during that vulnerable time, the only thing that was available to me was the Bible.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like during that deep time of trauma, the only thing I could turn to was the Christian religion. And it was not as good as, say, like, my religion because it didn't feel as fulfilling to me, but it did provide me some comfort, during
Mhm.
that time. I would read through the Psalms, in jail, and, it gave me some kind of semblance of comfort,
Yeah.
at my lowest points, that I would read the Psalms and I would feel some kind of ability to rally myself, during those
Mhm.
times. Um, and I've been in the mental hospital before, and the pastor would come and I would do Bible study, in the mental hospital. So it's sort of like
Mhm.
at my lowest points, I somehow turn to the Christian religion because I can't turn to my religion. So it's
Mhm.
just
No accessibility to it.
it's that ability to kind of use that as a way of circumventing my own religion, but it's I sometimes it feels as though, it's kind of a cheap alternative
Mhm.
to my own religion, but,
Yeah,
it's a good placeholder at times.
that's good. I'm glad that you had something at your disposal at that point.
Yeah.
For me, I would say that it's taken I still kind of get uncomfortable going into churches.
Mhm.
In fact, I mean, one of my stipulations when Britt and I eventually get married is that I do not feel comfortable getting married in a church.
Yeah.
Um, but so I would say that over the past few years, I joined our local PFLAG chapter, and a church has graciously donated their space to us. So they are a First United Methodist Church. So apparently there is a segment of that church that is very like faith or a very LGBTQ plus affirming. So that's kind of like helped me realize that there are some like LGBTQ plus allies in faith communities. I know like
Yeah.
the Unitarian Universalist Church is like
Ha
another
have
one.
you ever been to a Universalist Unitarian
I have
church?
not, no.
Oh, it's nice. I've been to them before, and they're very welcoming, and they're
Mhm.
very friendly.
I've thought about checking them out, but another part of me doesn't feel like I need religion at this point in my life. I mean, it's
Yeah,
possible that might change, you never know. I think another thing that kind of helped me feel
they're very activist friendly.
right, which I love. Another thing that's helped me feel more comfortable with religion, my friend Cindy, for example, is a very devout Catholic,
Mhm.
and, when like, she's known me since, like, 2004 or 2005, and
Yeah,
when my family basically were just telling me that, and the church was telling me that I was going to hell, like, Cindy was there being like, God loves you no matter who you love. Like God is love. That's what so like that kind of made me realize that there is something more enriching beyond like that wall of hate that I was kind of being surrounded with at the time.
yeah, that's gotta be nice.
Yeah.
I was telling you one of my ex-boyfriends was a Southern Baptist, and he told me throughout my relationship with him that, it didn't matter how good of a person I was still going to hell. And he
Mhm.
would tell me that on a regular basis that
Wow.
and, like, it imagine dating somebody and just telling them, "You're going to hell," like,
I can't
regularly and
imagine that.
often.
I cannot imagine that. That sounds terrible. I'm sorry that you had to go through
It was
that.
it was part of the abuse that he would do to me, that he just, like, wanted to kinda get at me, that he just wanted to tell me that I was just a bad person, and he just wanted to see me suffer.
And I think that's I mean, that's one of the unfortunate things about religion is that so many people will weaponize it, use it as a tool for manipulation, right?
Right.
I think that's kind of like why I just fell out with it because, like, people like my maternal grandmother, who I wasn't close to, like, she would weaponize religion all the time,
Mhm.
to the point where, like, I like, if I had, like, a fleeting gay thought, like, I would be, like, it's crying in the shower, praying for, like, 30 minutes to just, like,
That's
oh.
terrible.
And therapy has helped me a lot to make sense of all of those things, thankfully. But, like, at that time, like, that was really rough. Like, that's something that really, like, I mean, I'm sure this I for you as well with that relationship, that, like, those things don't go away. Like, you remember those things.
You deserve to be treated better than that, though.
So do you.
Yeah.
We both do. We're awesome.
I'm sorry you got mistreated as a young person.
I'm sorry you got mistreated in that relationship. Let's
Um,
hug.
let's
Oh.
let's hug.
Oh.
The thing you know what, I heard somewhere before is you become the person that you want to be um, that would protect the child that you were when you were young.
Oh, I've heard that saying before. I think that's a really powerful saying too. And that's why we've become who we are now.
That's right.
I feel like our younger selves would be proud of the people that we've become.
Absolutely.
Oh, Lagiacris is here. Hello,
Hello.
Lagiacris. It's good to see you. How have you been? Hopefully you've been doing well. So, are there say okay, we've already talked about like those, mainstream like those safe spaces in mainstream Christianity, like the Unitarian Universalist, segments of the First United Methodist. I'm sure there are others that I'm missing that are out there. Um,
There are safe spaces within, like, in 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 churches, like, the Catholic Church and things like that, but the thing about it is that they're few and far between because as a whole, you have things like the Pope
mhm,
and them saying that, love the sinner, hate the sin, and,
mhm,
it's saying that even though they don't like the fact that you are LGBTQ.
mhm.
You're supposed to still love the person. So it's sort of like, well, you're still going to hell, but I still love you as a person. And so it's hard to reconcile
It's
that, you know what I
very
mean?
double-edged. It's
It's
very
very
double-edged.
double-edged because it's like you're still kind of it's still it's still kind of not a full acceptance of you as a person.
Right. So since we have about like maybe 15 minutes left of the episode, I'm trying to get better about doing this. So as you're watching, if you could click like, that would be great. Of course, don't forget to subscribe for the algorithm, because we know that YouTube and its algorithm can be a thing. So Misty says, I was raised Catholic, first communion, confession, the whole thing, but I think I take the quote from Kevin Smith's movie Dogma. It says something about Catholics mourning their faith.
Ooh,
Yes.
yes.
And Misty said, I feel like that's the most honest thing.
It
Yes.
really is.
Like I
Growing
do.
up Catholic, I think that's something I really
Yeah.
and I went to the church when John Paul II died. That was the last time I went to the Catholic Church, and that was before my grandparents died. And,
Hmm.
definitely more in their religion.
Yeah. I feel like in a certain way it's similar with Seventh Day Adventism too. Like there's like a mourning. There's a disconnect between, like, celebration, like, and being there for, like, the, um, enrichment, the family, like, there's a disconnect, right? Interesting question. Um, how so if an LGBTQ plus person chooses, how might they go about repairing their relationship with religion? So, obviously, I wanna note that we are not therapists. So we are only speaking from our personal experiences. Um, I will be completely blunt. The way I mean, I won't say that I have fully repaired my relationship with religion because I really just have no desire to be religious at this point in my life. However, I don't feel afraid when I am in the presence of religion any longer. And what helped me get to that point, of course, was therapy. And
Yeah.
represent like in any setting, representation is important. Having friends and people who were religious, who didn't weaponize it, who would use it to kind of like uplift the people around them, that gave me good quality representation when it
Yeah.
comes to religion, you know. Um,
That's really important.
what are any thoughts from your end on that?
For me, the thing that helped me heal my religion was the fact of just allowing myself to practice my own religion and just
Mhm,
decide, because I'm a person who is, I would say, very eclectic about my religion.
mhm,
That I study a lot of different religions, and I kind of pick and choose. I'm very like, I like this and I like this, and I have a lot of different ideas about what God is, and I have a lot of different ideas about what is, you know, I
mhm,
believe in a lot of different gods because the expression of God is very different to me. And so I having this different belief about God and the expression of God, and kind of undoing this Catholic idea that it has to be, a monotheistic,
mhm,
one belief in one God, and that you have to do certain things in a very certain order, and having that ceremony of the Catholic, order, or the Christian order. Um, Undoing that, I still do ceremony. I love ceremony because there's something palatable about it. I do moon ceremonies though because of my paganism. I love biocycles and things like that.
mhm,
So for me, I tend to be kind of a naturalist in that sense, that I follow the phases of the moon, and I follow manifestation of, I come up with things that I want to
mhm,
happen in my daily life, and I try to work towards making those happen in accordance to, asking God or the gods, or the higher ups, the deist thing that
mhm.
expresses, um and I do love me a good candle burning, just like the Catholics do, just like other religions do. I like to coordinate my candles just like the Catholics do.
Nothing better than a candle burning.
Absolutely. So pagans and Catholics are very similar in a lot of sense. I celebrate holidays just like the Christians do. I celebrate Halloween. I celebrate Christmas.
Mhm.
I suppose I celebrate Easter to some extent too, but not as much. I consider it more like austere because it's a fertility holiday, and it is fertile.
The seedlings have sprouted.
Absolutely. I don't know. But like, it is what it is. But
No, what
when you undo things, you just kind of like decide, pick and choose how you want
yeah.
to express your religion.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was such a crucial and Lagiakris, I'll get to your comment in a second, but I think that was very crucial for us when we met in college too. Because like when we did discover that religious diversity group, I feel like you and I very much bonded over that level of self-discovery regarding like our, like impressions of spirituality and religion, right?
Mhm,
And to this day, like, I still carry some of that stuff with me because, like, I do feel like, personally, my beliefs is, like, I do feel like there is more in our universe that is present that we don't necessarily have the, wherewithal to be able to perceive, right?
mhm,
Um, and, I mean, I think that maybe that gives me some comfort too, I don't know, but, like, at the end of the day, I think that's what religion or spirituality does for a lot of people is it does provide like that purpose, that comfort, that kind
mhm.
of place to go to. So Lagiacra says religion talk, I'm guessing. Absolutely. I've tried religion before and it doesn't really mix with my mentality. I was raised in a somewhat religious family. I forgot which branch, but I'm not myself. That's totally fair. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too when it comes to like the mentality. Um, so interesting question. How does religion and white supremacy overlap? Is there a pipeline in religion to white supremacy in America? I mean, that's a very interesting question because I think we were talking a little bit a while ago about how religion has been kind of weaponized before. And if you look throughout history, unfortunately, religion has been one of the primary weapons used in colonization, right? In a
Yeah.
whole variety of different, regions around the world. And I do think that there is a certain degree of those systemic issues working hand in hand together, right?
Mhm.
What do you think?
So for me, what I think is that because you have people like Trump who use religion and white supremacy together to kind of, and he's not the first one to do it, nor will he be the last one to do it.
Mhm,
But he uses religion and white supremacy as kind of tools in his toolbox to um, kind of motivate people to into violent behavior and into certain things. There is kind of this pipeline, and that they are inseparable in sorts, and that there is this there is certain circumstances in which it seems as though they are inseparable in our country, that there are places in which it seems as though I mean, the KKK is a religious group in and of itself. I mean, it has roots in churches, in Southern churches with
mhm.
because I mean, it's part of the community, and it has its place with religious roots.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's just there's just no way around it.
Well, and so many of these things have such a long history being within the presence of one another that they've become interwoven over the years to the extent where they are almost, um inseparable, which of course, I mean, this leads to another question we have, like, are we as a nation having trouble recently separating church and state? Does this seem to be causing trouble across the board? Because, like, originally the vision for our country was maintaining that separation, you know, and I do feel like with like the legislation that we've seen, especially like the book banning and stuff over the
Well,
past,
with the Don't Say Gay bill too, like,
yeah,
with
all the
it's
anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, like
well,
that.
and the anti-woman, like, the anti-abortion
Mhm.
stuff,
Yeah.
it seems as though there's just this problem in our country because most of the time in human history, it's always been about expanding human rights, and it seems as more recently there's been, kind of this conservative Christian backlash in which there's a regression of rights, in which they're taking away rights in history, and
Mhm.
that we're just kind of going backwards, and it's been almost like the first time in history that we're just not moving forward, we're moving backward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think when we have, I mean, of course, rights stripped away, but when we have like access to education being interfered with, when we have access to literature being interfered with, like that, I mean, like all of those things have everything to do with knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And I think preventing that puts people in harm's way. I mean, we've seen that historically speaking. Oh, Rogue Agent Killer Rodan is here. It's good to see you. Hope you've been doing
Thank
well. And
you.
you are amazing also. Thank you for that kind compliment. Um, I mean, and when we look, we have another question about like whether or not religion has an agenda against the marginalized, and if so, what is it? Like, I feel like depending on where you are, some religion is weaponized specifically against the marginalized, right? I mean, case in point, many of these, anti-LGBTQ plus bills we're seeing across different states. Many of them are being funded by religious organizations or groups affiliated with religious organizations. So,
Yeah,
which speaks very loudly,
it does.
right?
Um, Final question. How do we
Final,
heal?
how do we heal from religious trauma and move forward? I don't really think there is one surefire way. Like, I feel like everyone's healing process is unique to themselves. For me, going back to what I was saying before, it had everything to do with surrounding myself with quality representation of those who are very devout in faith, and therapy has very much helped me unpack a lot of that baggage that I harbored that I really didn't um think about, like between that and like having friends like Cindy, my friend Brenda, who is also religious. Like, that quality representation, I think, helped me realize that I'm not going to be unsafe in every situation in which religion is present, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And mind
Yeah.
you, if there are LGBTQ plus people out there who have created a firm boundary, being like, I literally want nothing to do with it, that's their boundary to set, and they are completely valid in feeling that way. If there are LGBTQ plus people who are very much devout, with their beliefs in whatever religion they're in, that's also their choice. Like, if like, because I know, like, there's some degree of like shame that I've seen people throw at others for being religious in the LGBTQ plus community. Kind of like, it's people have like made it seem like, oh well, you are hypocritical if you're religious, and I don't really think that that's the case, right? Like, I don't think that a person having faith makes them hypocritical if maybe they're a part of a faith that has not always been a huge fan of the LGBTQ plus community. I think that's a choice for everyone to make.
I do too.
Yeah. Now, if they are also weaponizing the religion, then that's a different story, right?
That is, yeah.
What about you?
I think, and as a final note, the thing that heals religious trauma and all of the problems with religion, the thing that will guide us through is love. Love always wins.
Love will find a way. Let's drink to that.
I don't
Mm.
have any water over here. I'm
You don't have
sorry.
water with you? What?
I didn't bring anything. I didn't bring any drinks this time.
It's okay. My Irish breakfast tea is cold right now anyway.
I'll just pretend to drink. I'll be like,
I want you to pretend you're drinking a shot of espresso. Pinky up.
I literally just and I was like, "Oh, do I have time to get something to drink for this?" And I was like, "No."
My friends, this has been such a great conversation. As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting our podcast. It means a lot. Before you leave, don't forget to hit like for the algorithm. Thank you for that in advance. Share our show around if you're able. Subscribe to our respective channels. Mine here, obviously. Go subscribe to Ari's channels, Tarot Time with Ari, Strange Nothings, and Boocha Baby.
Lucha
Ari's
baby.
water channel. I find your water channel so relaxing, by the way.
I'm out of pocket on that channel.
I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, just know that we love you, and we will see you very soon next week, probably. Bye.